This is Dom Bettinelli, the CEO of SQPN, with a brief but very important message. For more than a decade, SQPN has produced the Catholic faith and pop culture podcasts that you love. We're a nonprofit organization, so it's only your generosity that lets us carry out our mission. We haven't run a fundraiser in 2 years, and that's why we need to ask for your help right now. Please make a pledge of whatever amount you can afford to help us continue providing your favorite podcasts, as well as exciting new ones we have planned. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. Thank you for your generosity. May we hear from you today? You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode number 102.
Don't be scared. All of this is new to you and new can be scary. When people need help and never refuse. There's this moment when you're sure you're about to die, and then you're born. I know exactly who I am. I'm the Doctor. Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the latest episode of Doctor Who with the 13th Doctor. It's called It Takes You Away. And joining me today on the panel are Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going, Dom?
Good. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
So, folks, remember to go to our Facebook page at the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page and like the show there, to like the page, and then to find this episode and like it there, to reshare it to your friends, to retweet it on Twitter, leave us comments, give us that feedback. Subscribe if you don't yet subscribe to the podcast, do so in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or even on YouTube, where we post the show as an audio-only video. And if you do subscribe there, make sure to hit the bell to get notifications when we post a new episode. All this is in service of sharing the podcast to grow the audience. Share it with your friends, especially those who like Doctor Who, and help the community grow. And we can reach more folks with this. Jimmy, do you have a word for us on the SQPN giving campaign very quickly?
Yeah, so we're in the second half of our giving campaign now. We're over the hump, at least in terms of time. As people know, we haven't run a giving campaign in 2 years, and so our funds are depleted, and we really need to hear from people. We launched a whole bunch of new podcasts, including Secrets of Star Trek, Let's Talk, and Jimmy Aiken's Mysterious World. We stepped out in faith that once we launched these and people saw the quality of them, that they would respond by supporting them. And we need them to do that, because without your generosity, we won't be able to keep doing them. And this is the time we need to hear from you. We're going to be making decisions at the end of our planning campaign based on the responses we get. And we're most of the way through now. People have been responding, but frankly, not enough. We're not where we need to be. We need to hear from more folks. So please go to sqpn.com/give, Give, and become one of our regular supporters, or make a one-time donation. But we particularly appreciate people who are able to support us monthly on Patreon. We have some wonderful thank you gifts we'd like to send you. But it is very important that we hear from you right now, because we're not where we need to be, and we need to get there. So we're in December. It's Advent. We're coming up on Christmas, which is the anniversary of God's greatest gift to us, his own son. So please respond in a spirit of giving by going to sqpn.com/give and helping support the podcast that you love.
Thank you, Jimmy. So today's episode that we're discussing, like I said, is It Takes You Away. It's the penultimate episode for this season of Doctor Who. And as a recap, I think this is the official recap. In an isolated house in the Norwegian fjords, a scared girl hides alone, waiting for her father to return. In the distance, a monster comes to take people away. And for some reason, one mirror is not working as it should. The 13th Doctor and her friends must battle their own desires to work out what is going on. So that's the thrilling recap of this episode.
Okay.
So
fairly accurate.
Yes. It doesn't tell you everything, and just gives you a little glimpse of what it's about.
Of course, I have to admit, I hear the word fjords, and my immediately thought is the parrot pining for the fjords.
Pining for the fjords, or Slarty Bartfast saying how he thinks fjords gives a continent a lovely Rococo feel, and he wants to do Africa in them now, but people are objecting.
Okay, now you have to explain for everyone what that is.
That's from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay.
By the way, I happened to see yesterday as I was flipping through that Hulu has the old 1980s era Hitchhiker's Guide, BBC Hitchhiker's Guide miniseries.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a classic.
That is a classic. So we are in the present day. The Doctor clearly knows that it's 2018 as they land, and by tasting the dirt tells us it's in the Norwegian fjords.
I like, and much more than that, like 25 kilometers away, there's an alpaca farm with a gift shop with a very low rating on TripAdvisor. And I liked the dirt tasting thing. I thought it was fun. We've previously had Matt Smith like smelling things and announcing the location. And so I thought the tasting thing was nice. This episode is sort of, how Doctor Who episodes kind of fall into patterns. Or certain subgenres, like we have the space opera genre, like the Saranga Conundrum. We have the historical, like the Witchfinders, and we have modern day ones. But this is a sort of different kind of modern day one. It's really the closest thing I can remember seeing on Doctor Who recently to a standard horror movie. There are lots of horror movies out there that are, low budget, set in a remote location, slow build of creepiness. And this really had a horror movie vibe. I mean, there's not blood and gore in it. It's children's television. But of all of the Doctor Who's I've seen recently, this had the most horror movie vibe. And I kind of like that. It was a nice change.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic creepy monster, something's going to get you type episode. But
you're not,
you see a lot of classic Who as well. You see a lot of that too, but
yeah, it actually is a new genre of literature and movies out there called Nordic noir, which I think like Girl in the Dragon Tattoo and that sort of stuff is part of. And so I kept seeing reference to this as being sort of Nordic noir, and that like
kind of the counter to Pippi Longstocking.
Yeah, very much so. The opposite of.
Admittedly, I have to admit, I would love, other than all the boarding up and the creepy monster sounds and everything, I would love to have that cabin.
That was a pretty nice place looking there. Yeah, exactly.
Big cabin.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Doctor also makes a reference early on to she sees a sheep in the woods and says, in 193 years will be the Woolly Rebellion, when the sheep rise up and renegotiate in a bloody manner the relationship between humans and sheep.
Yeah, so be careful in the year 2211.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I loved how she saw the sheep and immediately scanned it with the sonic, and I thought, are they going to pay this off as sheep could be monsters? And then they did, and I thought that was really fun.
Yes. In fact, I thought the monster in the woods was going to be turn out to be the sheep, but I guess not. One thing that kind of bugged me right off the bat is like, it's winter. I'm sorry, but there is no way that was winter in the northern fjords near the Arctic Circle.
I know. I had that in my notes, too. A cottage in Norway in the middle of the winter, and there's no smoke coming out of the chimney? What's wrong here? And I'm going, dude, this is Norway. This has to be like July.
Exactly.
If you want to see what Norway looks like in winter, I can point my camera out my window, and you will see the amount of blinding white. Exactly. That's what it would look like.
Right. Yeah. Ferns, moss, no snow, no winter clothes. That is, and she
actually looked quite beautiful. It was probably like 70 degrees and sunny,
right,
when they filmed this, but.
Well, and she did say it's at the frilly part up top. I mean, it's not even, you can't even pretend that it was southern Norway. No, this is the Arctic Circle, Norway. So anyway, they go to the cottage, and then it's all boarded up, like a DIY gone bad, as they say. And then they just go in. Like, maybe someone's in there who doesn't want people to come in. Like, maybe someone's at home and doesn't want to be disturbed. They live in the middle of nowhere, Norway.
Well, this is the Doctor. Don't interfere until the Doctor decides it's time to interfere.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they could have had a knocking scene, but You know, it would have slowed things down. And if Hannah had actually come to the door and opened it for them, we wouldn't have had the creepy scene of them walking around inside looking at stuff.
Right. And finding her in the cupboard, and Graham's remark about someone says, "Oh, there must be kids here. There are kids' shoes." And Graham's remark, or maybe it's just a creep who collects kids' shoes. Oh, that's a scary thought.
How does he collect them? That's the scary part.
Yeah. So they find Hannah in the cupboard, and she's hungry. They had found candy wrappers, and so Graham offers her a cheese and pickle sandwich that he just keeps in his pocket because, as Graham, as practical as he is. Well, there's plenty of times when we don't get to stop for lunch, which is a throwback, by the way, to Rosa, if you remember, where he was talking about, when are we stopping for lunch at some point here? So
exactly.
And this is when we find out that Hannah is actually blind. She can't see. I think the actress herself is blind.
I looked it up. Ellie Walwork was her name. And she was actually blind from birth, so there wasn't a put on that the way she was acting. That's natural.
I liked seeing them use a blind actress in the role. As soon as I saw the way she moved and the way she used her face, and so forth, I knew she's really blind. Yeah, and I did confirm it by looking it up, but I could just tell she is actually blind. I have known blind people, and I've even been legally blind myself. The men in my family get cataracts crazy early in life. And so I had cataracts in both eyes and spent some time legally blind. Wow. And it really does it gave me a whole new perspective on, like verses in the Bible talking about the blind leading the blind, because I was having to be led around by people. Mm-hmm. And so it was really neat to see a blind actress portraying a blind person, because whenever they have a sighted person portraying a blind person, they don't move the same way. Right. Now, in some cases, like Wait Until Dark with Audrey Hepburn, she's playing a woman who's just gone blind. So she is, she still moves a lot like a sighted person, but with some modifications. But someone who's been born blind, there's a naturalness to their movements, and how, like when you saw Hannah check her watch and things like that, then the way she uses her eyelids and the way her eyes move, it was very clear to me, this is a real blind person. And I like seeing that it's more realistic.
Right. It makes the way that it's portrayed feel more real.
Real. Yeah.
Yep.
There's this interesting moment when Hannah's telling them like what's going on, where she says her dad is missing. He was taken away. It takes you away.
Yep.
And, Ryan kind of jumps in and just assumes the dad has run off, and we kind of say, oh, that's just Ryan's own baggage from his own dad running off, and he's just being mean about it.
But he was right.
But he was right. Exactly.
It is his baggage from the issues with his dad, is how his dad took off. But it turns out in the end he was vindicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then and so meanwhile they hear this noise outside of this monster. And the doctor and Yaz go to investigate the monster, while the two guys are looking around. They are sent to watch inside the house, which is a interesting little turnaround from the usual, where the guys go and confront the monster. That didn't
even occur to me.
Yeah, well, yeah, I thought it was interesting, but I think it was intentional, because you needed to get Ryan and Graham into this next situation, this next scene,
right?
They had to do it there, and which is that they find a mirror without a reflection. And they really creeped out.
I love the line, "If we were vampires, we'd know, right?"
Yeah, that was a good line. And
I like the little jump scare that Graham gets when Ryan comes up behind him. He doesn't realize he's there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And then the doctor and Yaz come in, and the doctor decides to go through the portal. She's taking Graham with her and Yaz, and they leave Ryan with Hannah. And I'm like, why are they leaving Ryan with Hannah? Why are they taking Ryan along? But again, we need him to be with her.
Except for his muscular coordination issue, he is, young and strong. So if you wanted to leave one person to stay back and watch for danger to protect her, he would be a logical choice.
That's true. If they're still thinking that that there's the monster still out there.
Yeah. On the other hand, Yaz has police combat training. She would be a good one to leave too.
Right. Although, not knowing what's on the other side, you might want to split them up and have one strong young person on each side. So they go through into this cave-like space and encounter.
Oh no! Before we go there,
okay.
The doctor takes the chalk and writes on the wall and says, "This is a map of the house, pointing out its vulnerabilities." And what she's really written is a message. It's not a map.
Yep.
And we see it. And it says, assume her father is dead, stay and guard her, see if you can find who else can protect her. And as soon as she wrote that, I said, Hannah is totally going to nail this.
Yes.
That she's going to know this is not a map, because that did not sound like drawing a map. That sounded like writing.
Right.
Yep.
And Hannah, as a blind person, is going to pick up on that, and she did.
Yes, that was very good.
And it doesn't help much that Ryan is a terrible liar too.
Yes, he
She's
is.
constantly calling him, "You're lying to me. You're lying to me. You're lying to me. You're lying to me." Because he was, and he wasn't doing a very good job of it.
Right.
Well, and so remember rule number 1: the doctor lies. So
yes. So now we move on to this next side, and just to kind of sum up this first act, I think they did a good job of setting the creating the setting up a misdirection, because we think there's a monster and that's somehow responsible for this, and what's coming later on, and then we have this whole scary house with a blind girl in it. I mean, it's total classic horror story. And now we move into this next act, the second act of the thing, which is the doctor and Yaz and Graham go into this anti-zone. And I have to say that I felt like this middle part of the show was kind of a waste. I didn't really like it very well. I thought they were trying to shove way too much into one episode. So they encounter this alien creature. His name is Ribbons.
Ribbons of the Seven Stomachs.
Right. Who's apparently always very hungry. I think
that's all a metaphor, though.
Yeah.
Whenever he talks about hunger and food, he's really talking about information and trading information.
Yes.
He's basically like a even more evil Ferengi.
Right. And then the flesh-eating moths, which also inhabit that space, and there are rats. But we don't really, who is Ribbons? He dies almost, very quickly, and he doesn't even know where he comes from. He's like, I've always been here in this anti-zone, which the doctor eventually explains is a space created wherever the fabric of the universe is under huge threat, and it keeps worlds apart.
So the way she explains it, the universe, whenever part of its fabric is under some kind of extreme threat, the universe creates an anti-zone as a buffer between its fabric and the source of the threat. And so I don't know why they didn't say this in the script, but okay, so an anti-zone is a blister. That's exactly what a blister is. When your flesh is under threat, your body creates a blister as a buffer between the sensitive flesh and the source of the irritation. Right. And so I thought, cool, a kind of a universal blister. That's a kind of an interesting idea.
One thought I had too was it almost had a parallel to the gateway between E-Space and N-Space back in the Fourth Doctor time, when they had the E-Space season. And then they had the gateway between them where Romana and K9 eventually stayed.
Right, in that kind of limbo.
Okay.
Right. And it was kind of a parallel to that, although a bit more severe, maybe. I don't know how else you would put it, but
it's also a kind of a wood between the worlds. Right. That's a standard trope whenever you have two very different locations, like different worlds. I mean, you can have people just teleport between them, but also narratively, you can have some kind of journey between them. And that's
like
what
in the
they were doing here.
Chronicles of Narnia. Yeah. It sort of also reminded me a little bit of the 10th Doctor stories where he and Rose and Mickey traveled through the void to the parallel Earth where they saw Rose's parents. in the Cybermen.
And the vortex itself is a kind of parallel that we see all the time in Doctor Who between spaces they go to.
Right. Yeah. The time vortex itself. So it's a fairly common theme, I guess. It's that we've seen before.
So was your concern with it more that it wasn't executed well? That you thought it kind of dragged?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Narratively, it felt like that it didn't actually pay off. So, at first, it's this place that's dark and we can't find our way, and the Doctor runs a string to keep track of where she's going, and they encounter Ribbons, and they have to trick him or bargain with him to show them the way, and eventually, and he cuts the string, and they're lost. Eventually, by the end of this, they're running back and forth between portals with no problem. I mean, Ryan and Hannah, who's blind, like make their way pretty readily between the portals. And apparently Eric made his way through this space without any danger. And I just feel like what's the point of this to the entire story?
So, I mean, obviously to fill airtime, but
right.
And I think to increase the creep factor and the sense of danger and unexpectedness. I mean, I would defend this by saying it is more interesting and more creepy when you go through the mirror to have this other completely foreign environment that you don't know how to navigate, rather than immediately stepping into the parallel universe. And it turns out this place is basically like a fairly straightforward corridor between the two worlds, but they don't know that at first. Ribbons is deliberately misdirecting them, and because he wants the sonic screwdriver. And he even says when he's dealing with one of the flesh moths, which for people who haven't seen the episode are kind of carnivorous moths that will eat flesh but not clothes, and they're like sky piranhas only, or at least the way piranhas are depicted in film, they're not actually that dangerous in real life. But they're basically flying piranhas, and he throws it some meat, and he says, luckily everything can be distracted with a little bit of food. And as soon as he said that, given the food equals knowledge metaphor that he's been using, I said, okay, he's going to be, he is or is going to be distracting the Doctor and the companions with a promise of knowledge that's not going to pay off. And then that's exactly what happened. Because he said he would lead them to Eric, and he's really just running a scam to get the sonic screwdriver. So he's using the promise of knowledge of Eric as a way of getting what he wants. But they don't know that this is a straightforward corridor. Only Ribbons knows that, and he's trying to scam them.
And all that is fine. I mean, I don't have a strong visceral dislike. I mean, it doesn't. I still like the episode, but because we don't. One of the things that we lose by having this extended stay in the anti-zone and all this is, we don't. By the end of the episode, I guess I have to kind of skip ahead a little bit. We have this, thing going on between Eric and Trina and Graham and Grace and the Doctor and the Solitract, and we don't have time to really develop that, especially since we've got this. The Doctor claims to have made a friend of the Solitract. Well, I never got that because there was no time to develop that relationship.
Right.
I didn't believe it in that sense, and so I'm like, well, if they'd kind of got rid of some of this and just had an added time to the Solitract, I felt like that would have been a better use of the time. That's all. I mean, I still like the episode and overall, but yeah,
I can see that. But and I like the anti-zone part. I thought it was a well done section, but I can also see that argument of where maybe they could have shortened up that. And but
I'd have to rewatch the episode again with that in mind, but I didn't have a problem with it. I thought that the Solitract sequence, I got what was happening there. I didn't feel particularly rushed to me, but I could rewatch it with that in mind. By the way, one thing I wanted to note about the anti-zone sequence is, like, what is up with the Doctor threatening to kill Ribbons with the sonic? I mean, she's pointing it. I mean, Ribbons is threatening Graham,
Right.
And she then points the Sonic at his head and says, you don't want to do that because you don't want those to be your last words. So she's threatening to kill Ribbons with the Sonic. And we've never seen the Sonic kill a person before. So, and normally, I mean, she's using it like a gun, effectively. And we know how anti-gun the Doctor is. So she's either bluffing.
I think bluffing is what I got.
Yeah.
But even then, she's gun bluffing. And that's a little out of character.
I did get flashes from the 50th anniversary episode of what's with pointing the Sonics? What are you going to do? Screw them, you know?
Screwed into death.
I can't remember the exact phrase, but you know, where the War Doctor's just looking at the two of them going, what are you doing?
Yes. You're going to just unscrew it? Yes. So I thought it was bluffing. But
yeah, okay. And that occurred to me. I thought it was odd. Yeah. Also, I love, though, once the Doctor has realized that Ribbons is not on their side, and he tells them when the flesh moth swarm shows up, he tells them, run back for your doorway, get out of here. And the Doctor instantly says he wants us to run, so stay completely still.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's what's going to protect you from the moths. So he was going to stay completely still and let them run and attract the moths.
Right.
And the Doctor, I just love the cleverness of that. Nope, do the opposite.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then Graham, I love Graham. You know, Ribbons is going to try to take off with the Sonic, and Graham just body tackles him.
Yeah. Right. Action Graham. So, so they. I want to go back to Ryan and Hannah back in Norway.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan discovers that the monster noise is actually coming from a speaker outside, which Hannah would not have been able to discover because she can't see.
Well, she might have, but I mean, she could have like followed cause it's got to be plugged into something. If she followed a speaker cord, she could have found the speaker.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If she'd found the cord and guessed at what it was, or was wondering what it was. Right. And meanwhile, Brian has prevented Hannah from going through the mirror because she's discovered it and locked the door and taken the key. And so she knocks out Ryan with whacking him in the head with the door. And they've got a nice knot on his head the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
I like how it's Ryan's mistrustful behavior towards Hannah that causes her to turn on him.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if I'm in my house and someone is dragging me around and locking me in rooms, you can bet I'm gonna retaliate against this guy and reclaim control over the situation. And that's exactly what Hannah does. Right. If he had been more reasonable with her, she might have cooperated with him.
Yes. Right. And in fact, I like that they make a point out of, you know, when someone is blind, you don't grab them and drag them around. That's very rude. I mean, it's rude in
you don't
normal
do it to
time.
anybody.
But especially for a blind person, you know, just like you guide a blind person by offering your arm or your elbow, and they follow you that way. That's just good manners, and I like that they make a point out of that Ryan, you know, sort of violates the proper behavior by doing that. So you know, Hannah goes through the portal into the anti-zone, and then Ryan will follow her. Meanwhile, Ribbons, having been eaten by the moths, the Doctor and Graham and Yaz, they go to what they think is the portal back to the world and end up at the wrong portal and go through and end up in a reverse dimension. Now, I'm not sure everybody noticed this. I want to make sure that people realize when they filmed this, they flipped the image. So everything is backwards. The t-shirt, Eric's t-shirt.
Yeah, the most obvious example is Eric when we meet the father. He's wearing a Slayer t-shirt for the musical group Slayer, but it's reversed. And then when they finally get back to the regular universe, it's now the correct way around. Right. So, they flipped the images.
And I think it was...
They're on the other side of the looking glass.
And they didn't make a point of it. I liked it was just a nice, subtle thing in there. If you were paying attention, it's a lagniappe for you to notice. But they didn't, like, hit the nail on the head. And
they did put a clue out there, though, because was it Yaz that said, did they rearrange things?
Yes, as they go through, right. Yeah, in fact, and so the Doctor's hair is parted on the other side. She's reaching into the other pocket for the Sonic. You know, all those things. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting to watch it that way. And if you know, so rewatch it if you didn't notice it. Just rewatch that part at least. And I
wonder if they just simply they filmed it normal and then just did a digital
yes,
that's what they
180
did.
on it.
They flipped
instead
it in
of trying
post.
to reverse everything.
Yeah, which is gotta like drive the editor crazy, because all instincts are to say don't do this. Like like it's got to be like ingrained into a TV editor to not do that. So very funny. Now, so the doctor and Yaz and Graham, they find Eric in the house and they confront him. Eric has been coming to this place and now has stayed in this place because he has found his deceased dead wife Trina, somehow alive on this side of the portal.
Yep.
And she remembers dying, and she is his wife, but she can't leave this space, and so he wants to stay with her, but he needs to take care of Hannah, and he keeps delaying going back to Hannah in case he can't get back here.
So,
which I thought was very human.
It's very human, but as Graham points out, he's a big jerk.
He is a big jerk,
because he's abandoned his poor blind daughter and is terrorizing his daughter with this monster so that she doesn't wander off. Like, that's horrible.
Yaz has a line about shocking bit of parenting, referring to the monster spoofing.
It was good the doctor was there, because if Yaz didn't get there first, Graham would have knocked him out.
Yes.
Yeah. Both of them were ready to slug him.
I mean, Eric does care about his daughter. He says she's a teenager and she's got food in the freezer, so she'll be fine. So he knows her basic needs are met. But the whole monster thing is just wrong and broken.
Yes.
And Hannah points that out at the end. She says, you haven't been right since Mom died.
Yes.
And which is also very human. I understand that. People, including parents, can get broken through a horrible tragedy like that. I liked that they hung a lantern on the whole absurdity of the monster thing when Ryan just said, why didn't he just get you Wi-Fi?
Right.
For a teenager, keep the teenager in the house.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then go ahead.
One thing they did with Hannah and Trina is Hannah mentioned that the shirt she was wearing was her mom's, and of course, then her mom in the alternate universe was wearing that shirt.
Yes, yes, which someone pointed out was a production error, because the band, the concert that she's wearing the shirt for, that band, I think the Attic Monkeys it was, or something like that, was at the wrong year, blah blah blah, something. You know how fans are.
Just ripples from the Time War.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the standard Doctor Who disclaimer. So, and then, of course, where there is one deceased wife who's come back, we now have two, because, of course, Grace is there. And she's like Trina, doesn't know what's going on.
And immediately I said, okay, is Graham going to leave? That's going to be the big question.
Yes, that was for me too. And actually, the other thing that came up to me as things went on is you and I, Jimmy, had just recorded this coming week's episode of Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, where the question is, are we living in a simulation? And if we are, does it matter? And I'm thinking, are Grace and Trina simulations?
Yeah.
So, folks, if you go subscribe to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World and listen to that episode coming up this Friday. That's a little preview. Now we get this wonderful moment where we see Bradley Walsh acting his heart out. I mean, this is I felt this was the high point of the episode right here, where Bradley Walsh is the husband who is torn, who's confused, who doesn't know what to think or feel, and I really felt like that was. Personally, I felt like that he did such a great job here, and this is, I think, where the writing was best of this episode, was in this part of it, with Graham and Grace, and I like Grace. It was nice to see her again. So,
and it was nice to entertain the possibility: is this really her? Can these these be them after they died, somehow brought to this parallel universe? And what would that be like from Graham's perspective? If because part of you is really going to hope, that this is her and you're together again.
And let me say it right now: if this were Stephen Moffat's show still, it would really be Grace.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
No, because Moffat does not like killing off his characters. So now we get this next thing where the Doctor comes up with this explanation. Now, let me ask you guys who are more longtime Doctor Who aficionados.
This is all new.
It's all okay. It's all new. That was my question. We have this whole big new mythology about the origins of the universe, which is on top of all the other mythology that the Doctor has previously given us.
The before time era, before there was the universe, was apparently a very busy time because there's a lot of stuff that happened before time, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, one has to take the before time either as a metaphor, or you have to take the era of time as just meaning our era.
Right.
Because otherwise there would have been no time for the Solitrack to break everything.
Right, exactly. It's
all wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah. So what we get,
you got to throw that in there.
Yeah, of course. That's the other standard Doctor Who explanation. Solitrack kept the universe from forming because our universe can't work with Solitrack energy present. The Solitrack is both a consciousness and energy. It's a conscious universe. Okay. Now, not the strongest premise for me, frankly. I mean, it's... And in fact, I kind of come back to this idea that it feels like sci-fi written by someone who isn't a sci-fi aficionado. Now, I don't. The screenwriter is was it Himes?
Ed Heim.
Ed Himes. I was going to say Eric, but that's the character. Ed Heim. And I don't know what his resume is on science fiction, but I feel like
I think this is it.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes people who come in to write sci-fi who aren't normally sci-fi writers have this idea of what sci-fi is. And and they think it's this, like, we create giant mythologies and throw all this stuff at it, and it's very confusing and all these high concepts, and we go. And I'm like, no.
I didn't have a problem with this conceptually, because when you're talking about stuff that's really fundamental, metaphor has to play a role, and you're going to have weird collisions. Whenever you're talking about fundamental stuff, I mean, you just study quantum mechanics. It's a wave and a particle.
Right.
You know, you're going to have these weird collisions. And so it didn't bother me to say it's a consciousness and it's kind of a universe and it's a fundamental element of reality that interferes with other elements' abilities to interact. What it sounded like to me, and this may be because I'm coming at it as a, scholar of religion, but it sounded like Gnosticism.
Yeah.
This sounded like a Gnostic myth about, because in Gnostics would say, okay, there's this hierarchy of different fundamental beings that, semi-divine beings, and at least one of them is broken and interferes with the ability of other things to work together correctly. And so I kind of mapped it onto that.
Okay.
And kind of onto physics paradoxes, and I didn't have a problem with it.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I can accept that. I mean, it's there's sci-fi where that is complex, and maybe that's what this is, and I'll go with it, because there's different levels of sci-fi. There's space opera, like you mentioned before, and this is more high concept. But it kind of feeds into something else that I've heard some fans say. Fans can say all kinds of things. It doesn't make it true, but some people said that they feel like this season of Doctor Who, it feels like they took the basic premise of Doctor Who, a Time Lord who travels in a box with companions to different times and places, and created a show relatively unconnected to everything that preceded. So we don't have any of this.
That was Chris. When you listen to what Chris Chibnall had to say before the season aired, that was kind of part of his intention,
right?
Was to kind of, because we've been talking about throughout as we've been doing these episodes for the season of, well, where's the story arc? Well, he said there's no story arc, and we haven't seen really a story arc. Are these going to be returning characters? We haven't seen any returning characters. Are there going to be old characters coming in? There haven't been any old characters. Right. He really has wanted to make it a renewal with just the basic of, you've got the Time Lord from Gallifrey in the blue box with companions, et cetera, et cetera.
And
just
I don't have
very basic.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. Eventually it will reintegrate. But as saying, we're gonna do a lot of new stuff. We're not just going to keep going back to the same old well. The show had become very continuity heavy. and mythology heavy in the Stephen Moffat era. And this was returning the show to its roots. It feels, on a certain level, it feels much more like Doctor Who originally was back in 1963, where you had these more standalone story arcs. You didn't have big, huge arcs connecting them. You had what felt like a fresh slate with lots of new stuff being introduced. And it's not just, here are the Daleks again, and here are the Cybermen again. And so I don't have a problem with that. I was actually surprised at how much referencing of previous Doctor stuff there is. In this one, for example,
coming up,
we have reversed the polarity.
Yes, that was
exactly
pure third Doctor.
Yeah, that was nice to see that come in.
You're speaking my language, is even
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
What would have been even better is if Yaz said, "Yeah, I saw that on Star Trek."
I saw that. Or, no, they wouldn't have said Star Trek. I saw that on a science fiction show once.
No, they've referenced Star Trek before on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Rose at one point tells Christopher Eccleston's Doctor that he's not really Spock. He's not really Spock.
Yes.
Yeah, he's not Spock enough. That's right.
So, as in the explanation that the Doctor gives about her bedtime story that one of her grandmas told her,
one of her 7 grandmas.
She says she had 7 grandmas, and her favorite was the 5th. Now, again, folks, this is Gallifreyans. We reminded our aliens.
Yeah. It's all new.
Yep.
Also.
Yes. Yeah. And this was a bedtime story. Yes. Yeah. Well,
only when I couldn't sleep.
Let me toss this out to you though. Okay, so 7 grandmothers, 7 classic Doctors. Could Trish Chibnall be saying that Peter Davison is his favorite classic Doctor?
The 7th Doctor.
In that case, Patrick Troughton might be an agent for the Zygons.
Yeah.
Right.
What was that about when the Zygons were first introduced?
That was 4th Doctor.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm being kind of silly on this one, but
that is good though. That's funny. My 5th grandma. I didn't think of that. The Doctor says our universe exiled the Solitract to a separate plane of existence as a conscious universe in order to save itself, and then our universe could begin to develop its laws of physics and all that sort of stuff. So we have the exposition part of the episode, which is it's always a part. So we have Ryan and Hannah. We're back to them. They're running. Well, one of the things we're told is because the Doctor and company have entered into the Solitract plane of existence, they're destabilizing it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're causing the two worlds to come too close together, and they're going to destroy both. Right? Is this destroy both? Which is now we're back to we have to save the universe sort of stuff.
Yeah, though they don't they don't play that a great deal.
Yeah.
It's more like we can't stay here,
right?
And they only briefly allude to it destroying our universe.
Okay.
But it makes sense. I mean, the whole reason the Solitract got exiled in the first place was because it couldn't integrate with regular matter, and so it makes sense that this is going to progressively cause problems if there's not a radical separation, and so they think for a while maybe one person can survive in the Solitract universe without it causing a problem, but even that proves not to be the case, and that's fine because that was embedded in the initial premise to begin with.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, and then we have Ryan and Hannah, who they somehow know that they need to run from the Death Moths and running from them. So we have that interlude, and then they come through into the Solitract plane, and Hannah encounters Trina, her mom, but immediately rejects her, saying, "This isn't right. That's not her." And it's sort of that's kind of a trope. I don't know how close to reality is, but there's sort of a trope whenever blind people are in TV shows. They somehow have like extra sensory abilities. Their other senses are enhanced, and I've heard some people who have sensory issues, blindness or deafness, who have said that's not exactly
exactly it. Yeah. I'm glad. I mean, that kind of came out in one line where the doc. I don't know if they were. I mean, I agree on looking at it. You can draw the inference that Hana is somehow preternaturally perceptive because of her blindness. I mean, that's a trope that goes back to the Greeks, where you had blind prophets. You lose, like Tiresias, you lose your sight and you gain prophecy.
Right.
But I didn't take it that way. I mean, because I would just assume if I'm Hana and I know my mom is dead, I'm just being a realist.
Yeah.
That you're not her. Whatever you are, there's all this weird stuff happening. You're not her. And having that kind of rejection, even if it turned out she was wrong and it was her, it would still be a natural first thought for someone to have. And then the doctor says this thing, which I think was a dialogue flaw, because she implies to Eric that he should be able to sense that this is not her. He says, Hana senses it. Why can't you? Right. And I thought, no, you haven't. Nobody but Hana senses it.
Right.
You've deduced it. That's not the same thing.
There is a line from Graham later, right before the end, where he says, "You're not Grace. The real Grace had," paraphrasing, "real Grace had more joy." And I think what that's kind of hinting at is, and what Hana noticed, is that the Solitrak's portrayal of these people was good, but it wasn't perfect.
Right.
And there was flaws. And I think that's kind of what the doctor was getting at. What Hana noticed is, this person is not my mom. She does not act like her.
And ultimately, because the Solitrak is manipulated, this is, a classic plot of desperately loved person tries to trap others into a situation where they can be loved. We've seen that a lot, and that's what the Solitrak is doing here. But because that's its overarching goal, it ends up making mistakes, which is another trope in this kind of story, like not sending Graham back for Ryan. Right.
Exactly. And in fact, we get these interesting moments where the Solitrak, as soon as someone rejects the Solitrak and, figures out what it's really doing, it sort of, uses the Force to shoot them back through the...
Force pushes them off the island.
Right. What I found interesting with that is, it pushes Hana through, it pushes Eric through, pushes Graham through, but the Doctor has all along been rejecting the Solitrak. Why didn't it eject the Doctor first? I mean, like, it couldn't for the story purposes, but I feel like that's sort of a little flaw in the narrative.
My guess would be the Solitrak knew that the Doctor wasn't just a normal human being, that there was more there. And of course, the Solitrak wants the knowledge. It wants, it wants to know the stories. It wants to hear about the universe. And that's why the Doctor used herself as that bait of, keep me, let them go, because I've got all this stuff I could tell you about the universe.
Right.
I'd have to watch it again and see what they do. My memory is that the points at which the people got force pushed, because these are people that have more of a connection, or that, like Hana is the first one to get pushed, and she's just been brought in and has just rejected Trina, and that poses a threat to Eric, because Eric is going to take what Hana says more seriously than anybody else in that room. So you got to get rid of Hana first.
Yep.
And they may have it structured. People tend to get pushed as soon as they've said something that's a direct threat to the Solitrak. And I'd have to rewatch it and see how that plays out. Like when Graham gets pushed, it's because he's just rejected Grace.
Right.
And so it's like, now I'm a spurned lover. Of course I'm going to push you. And so Yaz is the only other one who gets pushed, and I'd have to see what they do with her. But at least in the case of Hana and Graham, there's a definite rationale for why they would get pushed rather than the Doctor.
Right. See, as I recall, wasn't Yaz where the Doctor said, send her back and keep me, basically?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was, the Doctor had a rationale for why Yaz should be sent back.
Okay, I know she did for Eric.
It wasn't that Yaz spurned the Solitrak. It was the Doctor saying, only one of us can stay. Keep me, send her back. Because Eric also finally came to that point where he realized who Trina was and rejected her.
And I liked the bit with, I mean, okay, so my memory is that Eric was the last to get pushed because the doctor is the one saying, pick me over him. You don't want a husband. You want me because I've got all the knowledge of space and time.
You might be right. I might be misremembering, but.
And so she I thought that was a very interesting and effective moment where the Solitrak is betraying its motives here. It's like, and think about it from Eric's perspective. I mean, you thought you were back with your wife, and now she's not your wife, and now she's given you the shove so she can have a more interesting conversation partner.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, once everybody's gone, the world, the Norwegian world, goes away, and we're in this white world with this very abstract sort of sense of the upper room that they were in, which is kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. And the Solitrak takes the form of a frog that talks like Grace. And that was weird. I'm sorry, that was just weird. Because the frog wasn't well done.
Yes, that's it. I didn't mind the weirdness of it, but that frog was not, its mouth was not well articulated, and it popped me out of the story to hear Grace's voice coming out of it. I wouldn't have minded a frog that talks like Grace, but the visual needed to work, and it didn't.
Right. It should have been maybe a CGI thing instead of a practical effect, which it looked like it was.
Yeah.
It looked like something out of, the Fourth Doctor's time.
Right.
With primitive special effects. And then the Doctor talks about being friends with the Solitrak, and this is where I was like, is she really want to be friends? Is she trying to make friends? Is it a put on? And that's where I would have liked to spend more time developing this part of the story.
My sense was that the Doctor is having mixed emotions at this point. I mean, she's just sacrificed herself. She may have been hoping the Solitrak would send her back too, and it didn't. And now she's in this new space, and she's just reconciling with, apparently, I just said goodbye to my universe, and now I'm here with you. I'm going to be with you forever, and I will be your friend. I'm going to make an honest try. And then when it becomes apparent that she can't stay because the destabilizing effect is continuing, she tells the Solitrak, even though I won't be here, if you send me back, I will still be your friend forever. Right. And I took that as sincere. And when she gets back, she says, I made a new friend. And so she's kind of got a lot of mixed emotions, I thought, understandably, but she's trying to do the right thing. And that includes being a friend, even if you can't be together.
Right.
So, as the story ends, we're realizing. So I do want to get to Graham and Ryan in a second, but as the story ends, we're realizing, the moral of the story is you have to let go of the past to move on to the future. And the idea is what it takes you away. What takes you away? Well, in a sense, it was grief. Grief takes you away from the life you're living. And I like that. I mean, that's a interesting message.
I thought it was the Solitrak takes you away.
Well,
or is it Kelgon?
Yeah, I think in the more literal sense, but I think in the figurative sense, it was that the grief took Eric away from Hannah, and it could have taken Graham away from Ryan. And was that nice moment at the end that kind of put the little frog in my throat, so to speak, a little dust in the eye, where Ryan finally says, "At least we got each other, Granddad." And what again, Bradley Walsh was quickly becoming one of my favorites. Does it so well. You see the realization on his face dawning, and that sort of thing. And of course, Ryan has to kind of like like try to push off the emotion. But there's that, you see that bond has been created. Because the thing about Ryan feels right now is Graham at least got to see Nan again.
Yes.
Even if it wasn't really Nan, and Ryan didn't get that. So.
And he also knows, apparently, from what Yaz told him, that Graham was willing to turn his back on the Grace illusion to help Ryan.
Right. Right. Exactly. So that was a very nice moment. That was a very good way to close it out. So
and that's the real story arc that Chibnall has indicated we're to be looking for in this season. It's the character development.
Right.
Yes. Exactly. So. any other thoughts that you want to add on this episode? Any things that I didn't quite cover?
Father, you first.
No, I don't have anything, so it's all you.
So I liked a number of things on the dialogue level. I liked, and on the emotional level, I liked the moment where the doctor was starting to realize that we're dealing with the Solitract, and she tells Yaz, "I'm scared. I'm genuinely scared. I'm terrified."
Yeah,
and that was nice. I liked when she's talking to a couple of times on the dialogue level when she's talking to Graham about Grace, and she says, "That's not Grace. No offense, Grace." And Grace says, "None taken." and then later she says she's furniture with a pulse. Right. And I thought that was a nice turn of phrase. I liked how the doctor said friends help each other face up to their problems, not avoid them. And I thought that was nice. I liked how we had a reasonable villain, because ultimately the Solitract concludes the doctor is right. And even though it's going to make the Solitract sad, she does send the doctor back. And I thought that was nice to have, someone who's not just implacably irrational to the last moment. Mm-hmm. It's nice to see that as a resolution for a change. I liked that this was an episode with basically no political overtones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw some people online trying to say, "Oh, there's gender overtones in it," but nothing substantial. I thought it was a nice episode. In fact, so far, this and Kerblam are my two favorite episodes of the season. Mm-hmm. I like horror movies of this type. Recently, I've been watching some basically micro-budget horror movies where people with only a few $1,000s go out and make a movie. And I found one, it's called Resolution, that was made by a couple of local San Diego filmmakers in a cabin out in Descanso, which is this little tiny place in the mountains outside California. And they just made this whole horror movie in a shack. And just with very small cast, micro budget. And this made me think of those kinds of movies. I really liked it. And about at the 2/3 point, I thought to myself, I may like this better than Kerblam. I think I do.
Interesting.
I'd want to watch them both again just to check that assessment. But I really liked it. I thought it was really nice. Oh, also, just a flaw though that they later tied up. At one point when Ryan is looking in the shed with Yaz and they find the bear traps, and it's like, look at all these traps. That's not normal, even for Norway. And I'm going, unless a hunter owns this place.
Exactly.
And then later, well, why all the bear traps? Because there are bears.
Yeah. And I laugh at that one because I saw that's like, you don't know people who are rural, do you? At least again, here in the United States. I know Norway is very similar to this. Actually, Norway has a very strong hunting culture as well that isn't in the UK quite as strong. But it's like, yeah, I've been to sheds here in Montana that look like that. That's not that abnormal.
Yeah, exactly. All right, excellent. So thanks for that. So we have a little bit of feedback on our Witchfinders discussion. Kevin Greenlee says, Jimmy misses something that really bugs me in this episode regarding the King James Bible thing. Yes, yes, the New Testament has different emphases than the Old Testament, but love thy neighbor is right there in the Pentateuch, and he quotes Leviticus 19:18, "Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself."
Yes, absolutely right. You totally got me there. I've the two great commandments, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Those are both from the Old Testament. When Jesus quotes them, he's quoting the Old Testament. I've made that point multiple times in the past, and here it just slipped my mind.
Yep. Yeah, Jesus even says that this is what the whole 10 Commandments are about, these two.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, and then so thank you, Kevin, for pointing that out so we could emphasize that. Les Hammer writes, why didn't King James speak King James English? And my response is, Because the TARDIS was translating.
Yeah.
That just seems to be for me.
Verily.
I wish the TARDIS would take the edge off of some of the accents. They're a little hard to process without subtitles.
Yeah, well, the TARDIS is translating for them, not for us, unfortunately.
Well, I know, but at least for the international audience, I wish the TARDIS would translate a little bit. It may be fine if you're in England, but elsewhere it can be a little hard.
It'd be like if the Doctor and the companions were Cajun, or something like that. So then Danny Butler writes, here's a link to some of Joy Wilkinson's research. Joy Wilkinson was the screenwriter for The Witchfinders. It's such a witty episode, he says, very Doctor Who. And then he provided a link to Joy Wilkinson's Twitter account, where, let me see if I can find this again. Oh, trying to open the link because I forgot to open it before we started recording. But she had a whole bunch of books. The Wonderful Discovery of Witches by Robert Poole, The Lancashire Witches, Histories and Stories, also edited by Robert Poole, The Demonology by King James, the Pendle Witches book, and The Fate of the Lancashire Witches. So she did some research. Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of the problems with a lot of the books you find out there on this topic, they're not written by scholars,
right?
And they will repeat myths like ducking stool was used to kill witches and so forth.
Right, exactly. Popular books are not the same thing as academic books. So Danny also asks, is the American history of Witchfinders the same as the British? I think it's slightly different. Now, I'm by no means an expert on this, but I think it's a little different.
I don't think we had Witchfinders per se. We had witch trials, but we didn't have people appointed to this task.
Right, and certainly
I think a lot of times it was like the local pastor, Protestant pastor or something like that would kind of take that role.
Yeah. It was more to deal with something that happened in the community as opposed to going and finding them or hunting them down and rooting them out. He says, the episode takes place in a village haunted by an alien force. Doesn't that change some of the elements of the usual narrative? And can you always judge historical accuracy in a story that has unreliable narrators? Would King James share intimate details of his life story so easily with a stranger? Would he not just play along and embellish? I mean, those are interesting points. Those are good points.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it for feedback on the Witchfinders. We had some others too, but we don't really have time to do them all. But thank you so much for everyone for sending your feedback in. I want to finish up with just another plug, if I can. Mm-hmm. It's Advent. We're getting ready for Christmas. People are buying Christmas presents. When you're doing your shopping, and if you're shopping online at Amazon.com, if you could go to SQPN.com and click on the Amazon link there, that will take you to Amazon through their Smile program, which benefits nonprofits like SQPN. And a portion of whatever you purchase will benefit SQPN. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It's Amazon donating some of its profits. It's their charitable doing good thing. And so, if you could do that, we greatly appreciate it. Your Amazon affiliate purchases are a substantial portion of our bottom line, frankly. Over the years, listeners have been so generous to make sure that they did that before shopping. So if you could do that, especially now where so many people are doing so much shopping, it's a big part of what supports us going forward. In addition to your giving at sqpn.com/give, your pledges and gifts. So we greatly appreciate that. We are very grateful to everyone. So with that, that's it from us on this episode. What did you think of It Takes You Away and what we had to say about it? You can let us know by visiting sqpn.com/Doctor Who or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page. Find the link to this episode there and leave us some feedback, or send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. You can find links to everything to relevant discussion, our websites, that sort of stuff on our show notes on sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the last episode of this season, barring the New Year's Day episode, which it's not considered part of the season. Who knows? It's all weird, very weird.
It's coming up.
It's coming up. But it's sort of the penultimate episode. The Battle of... Okay, here I'm going to say it. The Battle of Ranskor av Kolos. I think. Good. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you so much, Dom.
Father Corey Stika, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest.
Right. This is going to be fun.
This is Dom Bettinelli again. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and that you'll help us keep producing the podcast you love. Thank you for your generosity. To make your pledge and find out about the free thank you gifts we'd like to send you, visit sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give.